Welcome.
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 Welcome to Startup Central Victoria.
This is an exciting and collaborative journey.
Creating and growing businesses in the region.
Together we can learn to work and support each other.
We look forward to hearing more about your business ideas.
And thank you for your commitment to our region.
This is a wonderful, exciting time for businesses. We know you've been through a lot and we're really looking forward to working together with you as a region.
And finally, can I say that entrepreneurial spirit and commitment leads to transformational change. What a great thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren, for playing that video, and welcome to Startup Central Victoria. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Kerry Anderson, and I'd like to give you a very warm welcome tonight, and especially our guest, Adrian Kowal, we'll hear a bit more about shortly. But I'd first like to start by acknowledging and extending my appreciation for the traditional owners of the land. We are meeting on Yorta Yorta, Dja Dja Wurrung and Tangarang country, and some of you even further afield. Startup Centre Victoria, as it indicates, is across the Loddon Campaspe region. So 6 shires that we are just looking to build and support businesses. That is our aim. And this is my favourite part of Startup Centre Victoria, talking to actual business owners. We've got many activities happening, but tonight it is a one-on-one, well, actually many-on-one with Adrian Kowal. And I met Adrian now you didn't actually put this in your bio, Adrian, but you were winner of the Mount Alexander Business Awards a few years ago. And I was in the town hall when you were announced, and I'm thinking, well, who is this guy? And isn't it funny, after you see a business name and hear someone speak, I saw these utes going around our local area, business, and I thought, oh, they are a very active business. And I've just been so impressed by your reflections on your business and how much it's grown, and the team, which is why I was really pleased to have you here tonight to speak to us. So over the past 10 years, I know your business has experienced growth, and perhaps you might give us a bit of a tip about how you started off. Like all tradies, I imagine you started off small and you've grown that business. Now, I'm also hoping that you'll say it wasn't all smooth sailing, and you'll share some of those experiences too, because we all know in business it's never perfect. We all need to understand that. So perhaps I'll let you, I'm not going to keep floundering on trying to explain what your business is. To provide some context, and welcome, Adrian, please describe what your business looked like 10 years ago. What was your starting point?
Yeah, wonderful. Thanks, Kerry. Yeah, look, I sort of, I didn't actually have great plans to start a business. It was something that just, I fell into, and I'll give you a bit of a rundown on that. I've got some notes here in front of me. Just even though we are on Zoom, I tend to sometimes get a bit nervous in front of people. So
we're all friends.
I don't want to miss anything. Glenn's the one that makes me nervous. Is it?
Yeah, I know. It's okay. We can mute him. We can block him if necessary. You're with friends, Adrian.
He normally charges me if I need him. So. Yeah, so look, like I say, we started over 10 years ago, and we're a boutique electrical contracting business, and we're based in Castlemaine. We specialise in architectural builds. We also service commercial and industrial areas. Like you said, Kerry, we all start basically on our own, and we're doing everything. So, working long days. I set up in my spare bedroom in our house, and while I was doing this, I was also working afternoon shift as a maintenance electrician at a local factory, and trying to juggle all the balls and burn the candle at both ends and do all the things that I'm sure most of you guys are doing now. I bought my first work vehicle off eBay. It was about a $4,000 purchase, and that's where I got the ball rolling. it's sort of got to a point where the afternoon shift and the business was starting to clash, and being able to service clients and the afternoon shift was, you know, the time between the starting of the afternoon shift and the clients seemed to be getting smaller and smaller, and it eventually got to the point where I had to take the leap and go into the business full time. And whether or not at that time I sort of knew what was ahead, and like Kerry said, it's not smooth sailing, and it hasn't been along the way. There's a lot of speed humps and a lot of challenges, and there always is, and I think there always will be. It doesn't matter how big your business gets. Sometimes the bigger the business gets, I think the bigger the challenges get as well. So that initial period of growth, the first thing that I got was, the first staffing that I employed was an apprentice. Obviously, being a tradesperson, the challenges doing a lot of that stuff on your own can be a bit difficult. So an extra set of hands for me was crucial to get a start. And then obviously with having an employee, then comes a thing called payroll and paying staff. So I had no idea, hadn't had any training in that sort of area, and I didn't even know what that meant. And you know, BASs and all that sort of stuff were all scary things. So the next sort of step I took was to I had an old friend who I'd worked with previously, and she helped me set up the MyOb system, and was giving me a couple of hours a week to sort of help me on that financial sort of side of the business. From there, it basically was just slow growth. We continued to get more work, which then I obviously needed more hands, and another tradesman came and another apprentice, and it really just grew from there. But definitely at the start, there was massive days, 12-hour days, nearly every day. I've got some really, I won't say they're bad memories of working full day on a Friday, 12 hours, going home for dinner, going and doing night shift at a factory to support a staff in there, and a couple of hours sleep on Saturday morning, and back into it again Saturday and Sunday. So there were definitely some long days, and a lot of challenges along the way there. So
you've painted a picture that just about every early business owner can relate to, and you know, that's very vivid in my mind. We've all been there, as you said, and some of us are still there. How about we just do a quick jump, because I really want to, you know, highlight how far you've gone. So let's just jump forward to now. Describe your business now.
Yeah, cool. So we're 14 full-time employees. That's including myself. We've got a full-time estimator. We've got an accounts HR lady in the office. I've got an operations and admin manager. 10 vehicles in our fleet. We've got a truck, excavator, scissor lifts, lists and lists of plant and whatnot. And I'm sure in a room full of business people, I can talk about revenue. We're on track this year to hit over $3 million of revenue this financial year, which is a big target of ours that we're aiming to hit. So from the back bedroom and a $4,000 car, 10 years later, that's where we are now. And
that's the rewards of your labor. But obviously there's a lot have gone in between. What was the big prompter for you to actually follow that growth? Was, looking back now, were there the right reasons, or did you do it at the right time?
I think there's a couple. A lot of that growth was natural. It was, as word sort of spread, word of mouth, and I didn't advertise early on. It was just, we're in a small town, as you know, Kerry, and that word of mouth does travel pretty quick. So that was pretty natural, that sort of growth. But then I think the market sort of wanted us to grow and pushed us into that. So I was pretty comfortable with that at the time. I'd had some experience dealing with staff in another, where I used to work. And so I was comfortable with putting people on, but I had no idea what that actually really meant. I just sort of thought, the more people you had, they would do the same job that you would do, and it would just continue to be smooth sailing. But I also had this, I think, the false idea that if I was to grow, then my workload would be lessened and everything would be easier. And that's that's not the case. And I think something that was said to me a couple of years ago, and it really resonated with me, was that don't try and scale a broken model. So not that my model was broken, but if you're looking to grow, to improve a situation that's not that great, growth definitely isn't the answer. It's you've got to fix a lot of that stuff, which I actually had to go back and do a few years ago. So.
And we have heard the horror stories over the year where someone's grown too fast and hit cash flow problems or management issues. So what were the biggest challenge that you found along the way? You've already said you've had to go back and fix a few things. What did you find were the biggest challenges?
I think absolutely everyone in this space will say staffing would be the number one. And for us, that was and still continues to be a challenge. And I don't think that will ever go away. Our challenges in that space have changed a bit, but that comes from our growth as well. So being able to deal with staff and having systems and processes in place, but we still have the issues of having staff. You have sick days, and no longer you're just an employer. You're a friend, you're a family member, psychiatrist, you're a bank, you're everything that comes with being a business owner as well. So definitely staff would be probably the hardest challenge we've had along the way. Finances and cash flow. Again, I think most people that have been in this space would say the same thing. They're definitely a big part. Once we started to grow, clients would then become a challenge. It's very easy. Well, in our space, it was easy to keep myself busy, possibly another apprentice busy. But once you start to really, that growth starts to accelerate, you chew through that work or those sales a lot quicker. So, initially 40, 80 hours a week is quite easy to maintain. But then once you've got multiple staff there that are relying on you to give them 40 hours a week to pay a mortgage, that becomes a real challenge as well. And of course, I think stress, time management, staying true to your family and reasons why you tell yourself that you're in business, they've always been a challenge. And my business has sort of gone, as most businesses do, the growth sort of happens along the way, and then there's a bit of a plateau, and then it grows again. And I think each time you see a bit of that growth, a lot of these challenges arise again, whether it be the cash flow, the staff, the time, the stress, those sorts of things.
All right, now comes the fun part, because everyone's got their notepads out. They're going to write down the magic formula. How have you overcome all these challenges? What do you think has worked well to get you from you painted the picture 10 years ago to where you are now? What have been the key things that have really helped you overcome those challenges?
I hope everyone's notebooks are quite big. There's a lot of things along the way. Look, with the staffing, those challenges are continual. As I said before, they'll never be resolved. But a big part of having staff is finding the right staff, recruitment and recruiting the right people. And again, like I said before, Kara, I had to go back and redo some things along the way. Staffing was an issue. I'd just grown and didn't have the right structure. And we eventually, the last 2 years, have restructured our business and getting the right people into those roles, and even just allocating what that role is. So we've implemented systems to help manage those staff, checklists, procedures, processes. All of those things help with, I think a bad boss is somebody that just blames their staff for any issues that come up along the way. And a good boss, a good manager is somebody that realizes that there's an issue there if things are continuously not going right. So we've had to grow systems and put those in place, and you're constantly correcting things. Someone has said to me a while ago that it's businesses like flying a plane on autopilot. And when autopilot on a plane works, it doesn't just find the true course and head straight there. It goes off course and it comes back and it corrects along the way 1,000 times along that journey. And that's generally what happens and has happened with me in the business is we'll go off course, there'll be an issue, and we've got to bring that back in. And that's what you have to do with staffing constantly. So finances, the cash flow and funding that growth. We've been really lucky. We've managed to do that to this day without a line of credit. So we've funded ourselves through all those periods of growth. But we didn't do that without leaning really heavily on our suppliers. And look, there's one of these things that when you first start, you're really scared to do these things, to lean on your suppliers, to be firm on your payment terms with your clients or your customers. Ask for deposits. Don't be scared to ask. You know, that's a really big thing that the first few years, I don't take a deposit. They'll think I don't have the money, or they think I can't, you know, I'm not a big enough business to be able to do their work. We're really heavy on deposits now. We take progress payments along the way with jobs, because you just can't be expected to fund all this extra work and of course the growth. And don't be afraid to dictate these terms. You know, I think that was something that we learned along the way. You know, your suppliers and your clients actually want you in both respects. So it's okay to sort of say, all right, these are my terms, and that's helped fund our cash flow along the way. Obviously, having a good accountant, good financial people, you know, I reckon I've watched nearly everything on YouTube that's available, you know, in relation to cash flow. We run a really tight cash flow forecast spreadsheet now. It's just a basic Excel spreadsheet, but we run that really tight now. And that's something that took a long time for us to actually implement, and it's probably one of the most valuable tools that we use in our business now. And I can talk further, and Kerry, we can probably go into this a bit later, but we've even transitioned a lot further now with our banking systems and the way we do those. But again, we can go into that a bit later if you like. But
yeah, I think, or there'll be a few questions coming out of this. Straight away, I heard you talk about you had a new structure with staff, and I thought, well, what does a structure look like?
Yeah, so for us, pre-restructure, everybody had their hands on the basketball, and of course, as you know, when everyone's touching that, you're not going to score any points. So we had to basically put myself into a position which ideally will be a GM position, and the idea behind that is to be able to oversee the 3 and 4 key positions that we had in our business. So like I say, everybody was in there doing multiple jobs. There was concern as to who was doing what, or I'm not doing that. That's not my job with existing staff, and clarity for our employees was important, and it just wasn't there. So we reassigned our now full-time estimator. He was partially estimating, partially project managing. We reassigned him to basically just be a full-time estimator, which has meant I've stepped into the project managing role. We've re-employed and now got our accounts person in Carly, and again, just a bit of clarity with our operations manager and admin lady, Carolyn, that really just structuring her role and giving her the clarity on what that was.
Oh, if you've got that person on the ground looking after all your admin, you're at streets ahead. It's a key position, isn't it? Yeah, that's great.
We even started, I was having a laugh the other day. I think year 1, I actually tried one of those call centers where you sort of pay per call, and they answer your calls and send you an email with a message, and didn't work for us. I was talking to a guy the other day that he's working for well, but yeah, it was just having someone answer the phone, because obviously as a tradesperson, your hands are always busy, and yeah, having someone answer the phone was a big step for us as well.
Yeah. And something else I've heard you talk about are the system for recording your clients' work on, and you've been through a few different ones. So you're using technology to help you keep track of your client work. Have you landed in a place where you're comfortable now?
Absolutely. We're now using multiple systems. I think we've really struggled. Well, I struggled with the fact that I wanted one system to do everything, and I talk about it like the old, in the 90s, when you used to have your coffee table and all your remotes were on there, and you'd have one remote to turn the TV on, and one for the surround sound, and one for the video player. And systems are a bit like that. You'll never get one that does the whole lot. And so we have our main project management system where that's where we track all our jobs, timesheets, costings, and whatnot. Not to be confused with an accounting package, so your MyObs and Zeros. Completely different setup. Xero, I think, and MyOb are moving a bit into that space now, but definitely don't offer the level of detail and what you really need once you're starting to have multiple jobs and multiple staff. We've now got a couple other systems. We have our OH&S side of things managed in another system as well, but we've tried, we're on our second project management system now, and really happy with the one we're using, and there's heaps out there, heaps, especially in the trade space. I know not everyone on this call's in the trade industry, but definitely implementing a management system was key to that growth. You just cannot possibly do it on a notepad and paper, so it's not possible.
So how do you source all this stuff? You must be, well, you mentioned YouTube before. I've never heard anyone say they've learnt about cash flow on YouTube. That was a new one for me. But where do you find all this information from?
Early days, just Google, just searching around. Obviously, talk to people in the trades. I never did any of this sort of stuff, and I look at you guys and think, well done. It's a great step to reach out and get some advice off other people. But yeah, definitely talk to other people in the trades, suppliers. Even go as far as go down the line of sourcing a business coach. I've since done a couple of years ago, which was where we did that restructuring. And of course, you don't have to spend $1 million on that sort of thing. There's a lot of, obviously, Kerry, you're right in this space. There's a lot of government funded stuff along the way that can help. And I know at the moment there's funding, I think just out at the moment, Kerry, for people to implement systems. Definitely in the hospitality industries, I believe there's one tradie program that's being funded at the moment by the government. So yeah, there's definitely people out there to assist in information around those key programs.
Fantastic. All right, now we've had a very good introduction to Adrian's journey, how he's been travelling along. As always, I'd like to open it up to questions from the room, because we could keep chatting forever. I'm very good at that. And so who would like to ask a question? We're going to put him on the spot now. The really tough questions come up. Who would like to ask a question? Alex.
Hi, Adrian. Thanks for the intro. Just if possible, when was the most challenging time in the past 10 years? Like, did you feel you had different stages, as in the initial startup when you first started, and then you sort of matured or morphed into something, as you said, you restructured? Is there at any of those points, what would you consider the most challenging, and perhaps the one thing that other people can look out for in your experience?
I would put it back to the time where I'd grown but hadn't done it with proper structure, and yeah, which is where we've restructured now, and basically had grown something that I thought would save, and give me my time back and fix all the problems that I had. But I think it created more problems, and it created more problems. And for me, then actually having to strip it back and go back, a couple of years, that was a real challenge. And obviously doing all this while you're still trying to operate a business with 10, 12 employees at the time, that was a massive challenge. So I think it's really important that as you grow, you have that, starting with a business plan and structure of where you want to go, and be in control of that journey. Don't just let it happen like I did. And because again, once you have to pull it back and go back into your business and redesign it basically, and restaff it in a couple of instances, that wasn't a great place to be, a couple of years ago.
And just to follow up on that, do you have any tips on how to identify such a situation? If hindsight, that sort of thing. Like, when did it become apparent that this had to be done?
When it was too late, I think, Alex. It was.
Hindsight's lovely, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And yeah, looking back on it, there was nothing really that jumped out at me at that time, other than the fact that it wasn't getting any better. I put a person in a role that I thought would give me more time back, and it just created more problems. Right. And I think, again, if you're looking to hire somebody, or if staffing's, that area you've got concerns about, I think really process that and think through what that means, from start to finish, because I really didn't in early days. It was basically, I've got this much more work. If I have another person, that'll go away. And in turn, make me more money. And obviously, as I've learned now, that's not necessarily the case.
I think that's a wonderful indicator. Things didn't get better. But when you put someone new in a role, how long would you give them? You can't expect results from day one. How long would you give to see that change and say, well, it's not working?
Look, we've just had our accounts role that came in about 2 years ago. I would say she's settled now, 2 years. And she's an absolute jet and does an amazing job. But it's not so much her knowing her job, it's her knowing how we operate, and again, setting up the structure and the systems and procedures to allow her to do her job. She's got the skills, that's why we employed her, but to allow her to do it the way that worked for our business as well. And it involved allowing her to help set that up as well. Again, you have to find the right person with that skill set, and let them help you. I mean, I know nothing or knew nothing about MyOb. I knew nothing about payroll, BAS, all that stuff was all scary words. And having the right person, finding that right person, I think learning from them and then allowing them to say, no, that's not how this space works. This is how it happens. You know, this is what we prepare for our accountants, those sorts of things. And I can then focus on doing, you know, the stuff that I'm good at as well.
Mm. So when you get that good person, you've invested time in them, how do you retain them? Have you put some thought into that?
You have to. You absolutely have to, especially in today's market. Employment at the moment, if you talk, I think the whole world's advertising for people at the moment. So if you're looking for staff, you've got to be considering how you're going to keep those staff, because if you're not, somebody else already is. It's not good enough in my space to grab a box of beer on a Friday night and just, you know, think that's going to keep the guys happy. It's a whole culture. It's the environment, it's your client, it's your work type that you're looking for. Obviously financial, everybody comes to work to get paid, but if it's not a good workplace and if the work doesn't excite people, then they're not going to stick around. And a lot of thought needs to go into, you know, how that workplace is going to work. I quite often put myself in, you know, what would I like to be, you know, what would I like to have in a workplace where I want to work? And don't be afraid to ask your employees either, you know, what's going to make this a better place for you? And we've become a lot more flexible. I was a bit old school with the working from home arrangement, which obviously was forced upon us all, you know, a couple of years ago. And Carol and our ops admin ladies work from home today. And you know, our estimator 1 day a week works from home. And that's all that, a term that I struggle with as well, work-life balance. I don't know if that's a real thing, but
apparently we only have one life, Adrian, so maybe the life is the important part, but sorry to interrupt.
Very true. I think if you are offering that to staff, then that's, you know, it's a much more appealing thing for an employee than just the old dictatorship. I think that a lot of older employees tend to, you know, enforce on their staff.
We should have invited one of your employees along to give us a little insight, but yeah. Marty's going through a period of growth too. So question, Marty.
G'day, Adrian. Thanks for tonight.
No worries, Marty.
I was just listening to you there. I think I must be a couple of years behind you. We've got a similar sort of turnover, about the similar employees at the minute, but I think I'm doing the restructuring that you did a couple of years ago. When you did that, did you include, like, so I'm literally going through that right now, trying to break down my roles to hand over to others, and I've got good people around that can help. Did you involve people that you'd had? I know you brought in a couple of extras, but did you involve, like you said, your estimator that was doing a few bits and pieces? Did you involve some of those key employees that you had in that, not necessarily the back end restructuring that you had to do, but in terms of their roles, to get them involved and see where they saw themselves?
Absolutely, yeah, and very important, again, like Kerry said, to keep your staff happy. We did a bit of an exercise over a couple of weeks at that point, and it was basically called time tracking. And we noted everything we did, everybody in those roles, and how long we did that per day. And it very quickly pointed out that there was a lot of crossover, and it highlighted that we needed a full-time estimator, not somebody doing it part-time. and of course, Nick, who is our estimator, was probably and still is one of our most valued employees. And I had a good sit down with him and basically said, where do you see yourself? There's two roles here, estimator, project manager. And, you know, had to ask him where he would prefer to go. I put forward my suggestions where I thought his strengths were, but obviously didn't want to force him down a path that he didn't want to go down, given that he was a current employee. I mean, it's different if you're advertising for a role, somebody's coming to you looking for that position, whereas in a restructure, you have to be a bit gentle in that space, you know, to make sure that people aren't going to really roll the eyes at what you're suggesting and say, I didn't sign on for this, you know, I had other ideas. So yeah, definitely involve the other staff. And I'd really recommend the time tracking sort of scenario to see where people are spending their time, so you don't leave yourself any gaps as well while you're trying to, you know, assign certain people to certain roles.
That time tracking definitely is. I started trying to do time tracking just for myself to see where to allocate, and your day quickly runs out and you forget to do any tracking. That's the problem.
It does, very important to do it though. We just did it for 2 weeks. You know, 2 weeks was enough to sort of see what, you know, where your time was spent, wasted, you know, could be better spent too, I suppose.
Great question, Marty. Thank you. And time is, you mentioned, your family before, Adrian. What changes have you made to make sure that you can spend time with your family? Have you made any changes?
Yeah, absolutely. And big changes. I think that was one of the reasons I got into the business coaching side of things. Our little baby was on his way. And I didn't want to be the Cat Stevens dad, as I call it, and miss out on that important period of my son's life. And so, engaging that coaching and trying to get that time back. But one thing we learned pretty quick is everybody's got 24 hours in a day, and it doesn't matter if you're Bill Gates or Adrian in the electrical industry. It's the same amount of time, and it's how you manage that. So I spent a lot of time structuring our day to protect my family time and make sure that I can be at home on time. It doesn't work always, and of course in business, dynamic is a very important word, and things change. You know, you might have plans to go out for dinner and or a lunch, take your wife out for lunch one day, but somebody calls in sick or COVID struck down the crew. So you have to be able to jump at those opportunities. But very importantly, we made a shift to obviously put our family first, and my wife and son, to make sure that, you know, especially in the early years of my son's life, that I'm spending time with the family, because everybody justifies the time that they spend at work, that they're doing it for their family, but the most important thing for your family is to be there. So
great. Do we have any more questions from the room? I could keep asking questions forever, but please let us know. Was that a yes, Grant, or you're just scratching yourself? No, yes.
No, that was a yes. Really interested, Adrian, in the way that you talk about some of the changes that you made, like some quite sophisticated approaches to change, which is really impressive. I'm interested in your reflections on how your sort of leadership style has changed. Like, clearly you're conscious that at the start, you feel like you're a bit old school, but now you're talking not only about restructuring and being conscious of people's roles and responsibilities, but also really emphasizing the family time and things. How did you sort of manage your own evolution as a manager?
Yeah, it was a challenge, especially early days. I think I went from trying to be everybody's friend, especially I was a bit younger then, and you're employing younger guys, and it's a very fine line of being a mate and an employer, and a lot of staff struggle with it, and I struggle with it. And it gets to a point where you need to be a boss, and sometimes there might be difficult conversations that need to be had, and that's really challenging when you're a best mate or a buddy or somebody that laughs or that'll be fine, he's okay, he's pretty easy going. So that changed. That changed pretty early in the journey. That I noticed it pretty early in the journey. I think you always struggle with that, because especially like you just said, Grant, you're trying to be a good workplace, and you don't want to be grumpy all the time, even though sometimes you feel like it. But you do still struggle with it. But I think, I think age has helped in that front too. Experience, you learn how to have some of those difficult conversations after experiencing them, on a couple of occasions earlier on. I think really starting to work on the business actually got my employees on board as well, and further skilling myself and looking to improve things. A lot of people jumped on board, and that I saw a lot of development in my staff when I was looking to develop myself, which I think is important, because if you're leading by example and you're giving your staff, if you're being a good captain of the ship, I think, and leading by example, the rest they'll follow as well. So, well, the right ones will, I should say. There'll always be challenges along the way, but the right staff will follow you.
So how do you communicate with your staff? Because that's just so essential. And you've got 13 other staff members, and I imagine they'd be jumping in their utes and racing in different directions, and some will be at home, some will be in the office. How are you managing your comms?
So our staff on the ground, so our tradies, we basically communicate through our job management software, which is why it's so important to us. So all the guys have tablets in their vehicles, and we communicate via notes. They're not very big with emails, obviously they're tradies, so they don't like to sit down and type a long-winded email, but definitely our job notes is a massive level of communication. When it comes to our core team in the office, we have weekly meetings individually. So myself and the estimator will have a meeting on a Tuesday, and then we'll have a group meeting on a fortnightly basis with our 4 key office staff. So obviously we use tools, emails, we've got WhatsApp links, and we all use the job management system. But we are lucky with our office team that when they are all in the office, you can just go knock on a door. But obviously with COVID and isolations and whatnot, it was really important that we had to, make sure we were using Zoom's been a big thing for us. We do use that. So we still have our weekly meetings, even if someone's working from home or sick family members or whatever it might be, we make sure that we do those meetings without fail.
Great. And I know you've got some more plans in the making at the moment. What's prompting? Is it another growth spurt? What's prompting it all?
It is, yeah. So we're in a bit of an uncomfortable financial stage at the moment, where we're not as profitable as we could be. We've basically got a lot of overheads for our revenue producing staff, and we're probably at the lowest point of profitability that we could be. So our figures are showing us that we need to employ another 2 tradesmen on the ground, and then we basically see a big spike in our net profit on our current figures. So that's really the drive for it at the moment. Is more of a financial driver at the moment rather than a time or anything like that.
So it's as simple as employing 2 more staff.
Sounds great. It's not that simple. There's a lot that goes.
Marty's going to add to this too.
There's a lot that goes with that, but yeah, on paper, that's what we need to do. Obviously, there's a lot more involved than just grabbing those 2 guys that'll be no doubt waiting at my front gate tomorrow morning. So.
I'm sure they will be.
I just wanted to ask Adrian, how do you, we generally have got 3 or 4 ads running every month for different roles within. We've got 2 branches in Melbourne and Albury. And
Marty, explain to Adrian what type of business you are, please.
Well, I'm actually an electrician by trade as well, but we've sort of fell into the weighing. We got scales. We deal with weighing equipment, scales, weigh bridges, butcher's scales, any sort of weighing equipment. And so we're trying to find stuff all the time. Seek is becoming more and more, to me, is a waste of money. Just before I came here, I had a meeting with an employment agency that we've used in the past, that we've just engaged again for 2 more roles. How do you, obviously building up 13 plus yourself, in Castlemaine, which is not a major centre, how do you find them? How have you been finding staff?
At the moment, it's probably our biggest challenge. We've much like you, Marty, we've been Seek's almost annoying at the moment. Yeah. And so we're really struggling with those as well. Recruitment agencies we've had success with. That's actually how we got our accounts lady was through a recruitment agency. Now, unfortunately, that recruitment agency had to poach. There was not a lot of options, via the advertising. So they had to go and actively poach, which is a thing. And we're in business, so yeah, sometimes you have to do it. Look, we're trying all different approaches at the moment. We're back with another recruitment agency. We've just spent a lot of money on some visual advertising. So we're making, we've just got them back last week, some videos to basically put us ahead of our competition. So I looked on Seek last week, I think there was about 15 ads in our local area for Sparkies. Some are paying ridiculous amounts of money, which is a big challenge at the moment. And I'm sure you're in the same, and you're probably a bit more specialised too. So challenges there. You really need to, and I'm trying all this ourselves too, Marty, so I'm not an expert in this front, but really need to set yourself above your opposition. So obviously our videos is what we're trying to show, with our culture and the work we actually do, because we found a lot of people were applying for roles with us in previous times that just didn't understand, what we were after. And that, I think that came through a lack of knowledge in the marketplace of what we actually do as well. So we're really looking to promote that now, even along the lines of improving social media and our branding in the marketplace to really get people. I mean, we want to be that company that people are knocking on our door looking for, and I'm sure you do too.
Yeah, exactly.
I think at the moment it's a bit of an exception. Like I said, I think the whole world's advertising at the moment, so it is a challenge. And it's been pointed out, especially in the trades industry, but definitely hospitality. I know everybody's feeling it. So I think the biggest suggestion I can make to you, Marty, is what we're trying at the moment, which is setting yourself, put what you think is appealing to yourself out there in the marketplace as well.
Good advice. Now, Daniel, I see you've come on screen. Did you have a question to ask?
No, I don't have a question. I'm just listening, so it's wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, and Daniel's up in Echuca and roasts coffee and has cafes and looking at expanding his business. So good to have you dial in, Daniel.
Actually, I've just put our business on the market, one of our businesses on the market today, so I can concentrate on something else.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Lots of change in the air. So have we got any other questions? Now, Glenn, I'm sure, had something he wanted to ask. He's soaking it all up. Oh, Adrian's been shaking in his boots, Glenn, waiting for your question, but there's got to be something.
I'll make him too nervous.
Yeah, true. Oh, look, how kind of him, Adrian. He's not going to, but it was good to see you coming, Glenn. That was great. So I'm just thinking, with your 10 years of hindsight, Adrian, thinking ahead with all the change that's happening, a really tough environment, recruitment, all of these things, are there anything else that is worrying you, or do you see as a big opportunity? What are you scanning the horizon and seeing?
I won't say my worries are gone. I think we've seen the backside of COVID, hopefully, or the big disruptions that we faced 2 years ago and all up until the last probably few months. I'm not saying they're all gone completely, but I think those big disruptions are going to no longer challenge us as much. I'm seeing a lot of opportunity on the horizon. I think, and back to Marty's question too, I personally think there's a bit of change coming in across the board in the trade space. We're seeing a lot of the big businesses, or some big businesses, fall over with some big construction companies and whatnot. And I think there's some challenging times for those sort of large scale, what we just say, low margin businesses. And I think what that will do is slowly filter down to us smaller guys and help us with our staffing, with our client base and whatnot. Is again, not an expert in that space, but I'm seeing a lot of opportunity there. Government spending at the moment bigger than I've ever seen in different areas, and there's so much, and that's not just trade. There's grants, funding, spends in all aspects for all our businesses, I think, and there's a lot of room for people to get their hands on some of that revenue or sales or whatever they want to look at there, even just grants. So I think it's exciting, and you know, if you'd asked me that 2 years ago, Kerry, I was shaking my boots. You know, most nights I'd come over and sit in the backyard and think it was going to be the end of the business with the COVID challenges we were faced. But coming out the back of that now, I'm really excited about it, and obviously I'm a lot more comfortable with our business now that, you know, we're ready for all these exciting prospects. So I think it's exciting for a lot of businesses that there's so much stimulus out there. There's going to be changes, I think, in the employment space. And I'm not an economist, but I think there's been a lot of false money around in the market at the moment, and hence, you know, cars are selling for more than what people paid for them. Property's gone through the roof, and I think now it's settling, and the challenges with recruitment and whatnot, I think will settle with that as well. So
I love it. The big companies potentially fall over, you get more employees. However, for the smaller guys, that cash flow and not getting caught in the big companies owing you is always a tricky space at different times when the economy is getting pinched. And we're certainly noticing a change in tenders where construction companies are putting up their prices. And as I mentioned in a meeting today, that's because they've been caught out. You know, they've tendered for something, quoted, and then the materials have gone up, and there's been little, if any, profit margins. So they're really being cautious at the moment. So we certainly want all our small businesses in the region to be very cautious about their cash flow and asking for deposits. You know, it's just a no-brainer. And I was glad to hear you mention that early in the piece. It's just good business. You know, I know when you're in a small town, you're dealing with people that you know quite often, but it's good business, and anyone that appreciates your worth will offer to pay you. So you shouldn't be out of pocket.
Right. And I think be confident too, Kerry, like I said before, that the customers coming to you, they want your service, whatever that, or product, or whatever that might be. So be confident to know that. And like you say, most customers, when you ask for a deposit invoice or a upfront payment, we've found most are absolutely fine with it, almost expect it sometimes. And generally the ones that are a challenge getting a 50% deposit out of will be the ones that are going to be a lot harder at the end getting the whole lot. So, you know, be confident to ask for it. And I think ask for, you know, dictate your terms to your clients and say, hey, for us to do this transaction, we're going to need, you know, 20% deposit, 10% at this, you know, I'm talking trades here. I'm sure you could probably put it in a lot of the other businesses as well, but, you know, set yourself stages so you can actually get those payments, so you're not really hurting yourself financially along the way. At the end of the day, these customers should have budgeted to be able to give you this money. So yeah, make sure you're not getting squashed in the process.
Okay. Any last questions before we wrap up? Because I'm going to ask Adrian to sort of wrap it all up and give his top tips of what we should be looking for in scaling up our businesses sustainably. Was that a question, Bryce? Oh, it's just blowing the flies away. Yes. Okay, good. I thought I saw movement. All right. So here's the big question. Just wrapping up the whole conversation, Adrian, what are the key things? Ned, was that sorry. Welcome, Ned. You just need to unmute.
Yeah,
perfect.
Sorry. I was just wondering, you mentioned you have a job management software that you use. What software is that, or do you have, you said there's multiples of them. Is there any, you've obviously settled on one or a couple, is there any that you'd recommend for tracking everything and keeping all that stuff streamlined?
Ned, what do you do, mate? What's your business?
I'm an electrician.
That, all the Sparkies. We use a system called Aeroflow, mate, and it's, look, there's heaps. I think, Bryce, are you Tradify or? Yep, Tradify. There's multiple in that space. We were tossing up. You've really got to size that to your business too, Ned, or size it that you'll grow into it if you are planning on growth. So we had to transition. We started on a much smaller system and outgrew it within a couple of years, and it just didn't have the functionality that we wanted. So we did a lot of research around the different systems at the time, and then there's more in the space than when we were looking. We were basically weighing up between two systems that were very similar, Aeroflow and Simpro. Simpro's probably has been the leader in our space for a while in the trades area. For us, it was a cost thing. Aeroflow were very, very similar, and we ended up just going with a better option for us at that time. But Aeroflow is a big system, really big. So I'd really encourage, if you, when I say that, very broad, and some people like a more direct system that tells you what to do. Aeroflow is very flexible, and sometimes that's not a good thing. So there are companies that I could probably pass on to Kerry. I'm just trying to remember the name of the one that actually they're a funded company, and they'll assist you finding the right system for your business, and that takes into account the size you are now, the size you want to be, your client, the type of work you do. You know, for trades-based businesses, you know, a Sparkies might be different to a builder's and a plumber. So yeah, I'll find who that is, Kerry, and I might pass that on to you. There's definitely a company I know of. That,
well, now I've looked at Ned's surname, I know exactly how to find him. You're over in Rushworth, I think, Ned, that direction. Great, welcome. All right, fantastic. Now we have Jackie and Bree in the room also, totally different. They're not electricians, I'm sure of it. They're not electricians or tradies. So when you do your wrap up, your top tips, we want you to think about any growing sustainably, scaling up for any business, your top tips. Adrian, go for it.
Top tips, have a plan at the start. Where do you want to go? I think the approach I took at the start, just growing because it was there to grow, and you know the customers wanted me to grow. That was a recipe for disaster if I followed that. So set yourself a plan, involve your family, involve your long-term plan, 10, 15 years time where you want to be, and work backwards, reverse engineer what that means to you, and you know where you think you need to be with your business there, and don't just grow for the sake of growing. Work on your staffing, don't rush into staffing. Take your time, find the right people. At the moment, you have to take your time, Marty, as we said, but it's definitely something to get the right people in the jobs. Nobody likes to lay people off, which we've had to do if they're not the right people for that job. So set those positions up and work with the people when you find them to make sure that that position and that staff member is working for you and making the business and the employee are all working and everybody's happy. And I think finally, the last point was, I've touched on it a few times, is lean on your suppliers, lean on your clients. Don't be scared to get them to help with your growth. You know, everybody wants, your suppliers want you as a customer, and your customers want you as a service provider, whatever that may be. So don't be ashamed or scared to ask to help along the way with that cash flow side of things, or you'll find yourself putting on a brave face and the bank balance won't be as brave.
They're actually referred to as the third bank sometimes, and it's all about communications. If you just let them know, I'm going through a tight period, can we hold off, you know, and you know, they want you. You're great advice. So that's fantastic, Adrian. And something you mentioned earlier before, which I was very pleased about, because I can now flag that our very next meetup will be, we've got Easter, but 28th of April, we're going to have a panel of speakers talking about the benefits, the opportunities of doing business to government. You know, how many billions of dollars at a federal, state, local level is available, and sometimes the smaller businesses just turn away from it, whether it's the paperwork, whatever the barriers are. It will be an opportunity to explore that and work out how lucrative it can be if you tap into those funding sources, which of course is our taxpayer money at work. So why not benefit from that too? So thank you so much, Adrian. Thank you to Lauren in the background, as always, from wonderful Lauren from La Trobe University, making this all happen for us. And thank you everyone for your great questions. And Adrian, we appreciate you breaking into your family time to spend with us today. So thank you very much.
No problem.
Thanks, Adrian. Okay. And thanks, Kerry.
Pleasure.